But we had an entire...
President Donald Trump lashed out at stupid critics from within his own party and called for unity on Sunday after drawing Republican criticisms and warnings of a bloodbath in the November 3 election.
I call them stupid, stupid people because they play right into the hands. But the Democrats...
To Indonesia now, where the coronavirus has now overtaken the Philippines. It now leads Southeast Asia in the number of reported cases and deaths from the disease. As of Indonesia has now reported 361,867 cases, and the Philippines 351,750. More significantly, Indonesia's death toll of 12,511 is nearly double that of the Philippines and is the highest in East Asia. Deki Budiman, an Indonesian epidemiologist at Australia's Griffith University, said in the New York Times that Indonesia has to change its strategy by increasing testing massively and aggressively. Because of the lack of testing, he said many patients come to the hospital only when they are too sick to be helped. He also said the actual number of cases is likely to be 2 to 10 times higher than the official figures. The Times also said, as a whole, Southeast Asia's 11 countries have done relatively well in containing the virus. With a population of 655 million, the region reports about 820,000 cases. Vietnam and Thailand have led the way. They report fewer than 4,800 cases and only 94 deaths since the pandemic began. But other countries, such as Myanmar and Malaysia, have seen a large spike in cases over the past 10 days and have imposed partial lockdowns in some areas.
Meanwhile, here in the Philippines, the mayors of the 17 cities and municipalities in Metro Manila agreed to the extension of the General Community Quarantine, or GCQ, in the National Capital Region until the end of the year. In a virtual presser, here's what MMDA General Manager Jose Arturo Garcia said.
Ginawa po nating plano is GCQ hanggang end of the year. Kasi parang sabi po ng mga mayors natin, mas madali yung magluwag unti-unti kaya sa MGC ko kagad na 100% saka tayo magbabawas. No? Ibig sabihin, gradual po lahat ng increase, no? Depende po sa sitwasyon. At nakita naman po natin, lahat po ng hiniling ng economic team, binibigay po ng NCR mayors. Ang talagang no-no lang sa atin is yung mga sinihan, concerts, or including the Christmas party na pag-usapan na rin po namin yan. Sa amin po sa ahensya, si Chairman Lee po nag-declare na wala kaming Christmas party. So we're encouraging even the private sectors na wala na rin mga Christmas party. So far naman, hanggat wala pong bagong development, yun pa rin po ang napagkasunduan. So it still depends po kung ano mangyayari. Pero sabi nga ng NCR mayors natin, sumusuporta tayo sa economic team sa pagbubukas unti-unti. So it's not a matter of MGCQ or GCQ. Ang sa atin lang is gradual, ang pagbubukas at yung restrictions natin lumuluwag unti-unti din.
He also said the recommendation, still subject to the approval of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, was thought to be the better option as it would allow the gradual reopening of the economy. For areas with high numbers of COVID-19 infections, he said the local government units, or LGUs, will have the authority to impose localized lockdowns. NCR is currently under GCQ until the end of October. The mayors likewise agreed to allow persons aged 18 to 65 outside their homes.
And staying in the Philippines, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire said most COVID-19 vaccines currently under development require 2 doses per person. However, the DOH Undersecretary also said that the price for the vaccine has not been determined, but the government is already negotiating with manufacturers.
Ang iba-iba ho yung mga bakuna, no, na pinapresenta sa atin. But most of these vaccines that are being presented, no, at ginagawa ngayon sa merkado ay 2 doses po siya, no. So it's 2 doses for each person. Yun pong presyo, hindi pa rin ho yan sigurado, no. Marami pa hong mga lumalabas na ibang presyo, and what the government is doing right now, nakikipag-usap po tayo sa iba't ibang mekanismo katulad nung sa COVAX facility kung saan mabibigyan tayo na mas mababa na presyo because we will be subsidized as one of those countries na pwedeng eligible for this, no? And aside from that, of course, we are talking with other manufacturers through bilateral partners para mas mapababa pa natin ang presyo, mas maging accessible para sa Pilipinas itong mga ganitong klaseng bakuna.
Another COVID-19 development, the coronavirus remains active in human skin for 9 hours, say Japanese researchers, which they say shows the need for frequent hand washing to combat COVID-19. The pathogen that causes flu survives on human skin for 1.8 hours. By comparison, says the study published this month in the Clinical Infectious Diseases Journal. The research team tested skin collected from autopsy specimens about 1 day after the death. Both the coronavirus and the flu virus are inactivated within 15 seconds by applying ethanol, which is used in hand sanitizers. The study also backs World Health Organization guidelines for regular and thorough hand washing to limit transmission of the virus.
The number of confirmed coronavirus cases worldwide passed 40 million on Monday as fresh measures to combat the spread of the virus came into effect in several European countries. The latest surge in cases sent the total registered worldwide past 40 million, according to a Johns Hopkins tracker. More than half of the caseload is in the 3 hardest hit countries, the United States, India, and Brazil. In Europe, meanwhile, more than 250,000 people have died. Cafes and restaurants across Belgium were shuttered for 4 weeks as the country tackled its own infection spike, part of a continent-wide surge that has seen a 44% increase in cases across Europe in the past week. Some businesses have protested despite authorities warning the country was in the middle of an exponential increase in cases. Let's listen in.
On ne se sent pas considéré et ça me fait mal au cœur. Je suis vraiment désolé, mais j'en peux plus quoi. Même nous, serveurs ou responsables, ou cuisiniers, ou plongeurs, tout le monde souffre. C'est horrible. Il n'y a qu'un mot à dire. Je vous laisse. Bonne soirée.
Meanwhile, Switzerland was largely spared when the coronavirus emerged in China late last year and swept the world. But infections have doubled in the wealthy Alpine nation in the last 7 days, prompting new restrictions. The Swiss government said it was making the wearing of masks in indoor public spaces compulsory. Gathering of more than 15 people in public would also be banned under the rules to take effect on Monday. Service in restaurants and bars would be restricted to seated customers only. The Federal Council also said working from home was recommended for all who were able to do so. Switzerland is now the European country where virus infections have progressed the fastest in the past week, with a rise of 146%, according to AFP data. Total deaths have reached 1,822 out of a population of 8.5 million.
Meanwhile, Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte announced a new series of measures to tackle the rising number of virus cases, with restrictions placed on bars and restaurants and a push to increase working from home. Restaurants will have to display their maximum capacity, close at midnight at the latest, and limit the number of people per table to 6, while bars will have to close at 6 p.m. unless they can offer table service to seated customers. Amateur team sports were also banned. Arrivals at schools will be staggered to help with social distancing. Local festivals and fairs, very widespread in Italy, will also be banned, affecting a sector which, according to the agricultural union, Coldiretti, represents 34,000 jobs and 900 million euros annual turnover. Italy was the first European country to be badly hit by the virus and has registered over 414,000 cases, including 36,543 deaths.
And an even longer lockdown began coming to an end in Australia on Monday, where the 5 million inhabitants of Melbourne were allowed to leave their homes for more than 2 hours a day for the first time since July. Residents dashed back to reopened salons.
So many clients want to do haircut, so every day send a message, so I couldn't open salon. So finally, from yesterday, there are so many messages for me. They want a haircut and something change their style.
Quite a long time because my hair is just getting here, and I think I'm very excited about my new look.
Yes, this is the longest time, and it's nice to actually have some normality by having my hair cut and decently styled.
Melbourne's 5 million people had been barred from leaving their homes with a few exceptions, including shopping for essentials, exercising, or going to work for 3 months. They still face a litany of travel restrictions and tough-to-remember rules for even most mundane activities, but will now be able to get a much-needed haircut and do more outdoor socially distanced activities. Salon owners still have to contend, however, with restrictions on the number of people allowed on the premises at the same time, meaning those eager to correct self-inflicted dye jobs or improvised trims could face a long wait. Golfers can also tee it up again, although they will have to go around in groups of 2. And according to Golf Australia, masks must still be worn when playing.
And Israel has also lifted restrictions that ban people from traveling more than a kilometer from their homes, as well as closing kindergartens, beaches, and national parks. Let's listen in.
צוות הגן הגיע במהלך השבוע הקודם כדי להכין את הגן. ניקינו את הגן, חיתינו אותו, הכנו את החצר וקיבלנו את הילדים בשמחה. אנחנו מקפידות על עטיית מסכה בגן ובחוץ, מה שקודם היה רק בחוץ. וזה קצת מקשה על המגע האישי עם הילדים, על החיוך שפחות רואים. אנחנו מתקשות לשמור על מרחק מהילדים, זה בלתי אפשרי בגיל הצעיר.
When face-to-face contact with the public were allowed back to work, and a contentious ban on individuals moving more than 1 kilometer from their homes was lifted. Now, that rule had sparked anger among some Israelis who claimed it was designed to stem a wave of protests against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The latest lockdown was the second since Israel recorded its first COVID-19 case in February. Tough restrictions introduced in March were lifted after about 2 months, but critics of the government have said the easing was premature. But Prime Minister Netanyahu said this time we are moving cautiously.
Veteran chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat, the latest political figure to be infected with the virus, is in a critical condition. The Israeli hospital treating him in Jerusalem said he is in a medically induced coma. His brother, Saber Erekat, said his situation is not good. His treatment, the hospital said, is a huge challenge because he underwent a lung transplant 3 years ago and has a weakened immune system and bacterial infection in addition to coronavirus. He has been a key figure in Palestinian politics for decades, often serving as a main interlocutor for foreign envoys and the international media.
وبالأمس ليس كما يقول جرين بلات إنه يوم.
In other news, Japan and Vietnam agreed to step up security and defense cooperation Monday, reaching an agreement in principle for Tokyo to export defense equipment and technology to the Southeast Asian nation. Now, the deal comes as concerns mount over China's increasing assertiveness in the contested South China Sea, with Beijing expanding its military presence in the region. The pact would also allow Japan to export equipment, likely including patrol planes and radar, to Vietnam, according to Japanese news agency Kyodo. Let's take a look.
新型コロナ禍からの回復に向けた協力です。本日、ビジネストラックの運用開始と双方向の旅客便の再開でも合意をしました。サプライチェーンの多元化を推進します。南シナ海や北朝鮮を含む地域の課題について緊密な連携を確認をいたしました。特に拉致問題は私自身にとっても最重要課題であり、副首相から改めて日本の取り組みへの指示をいただきました。防衛装備品技術移転協定の実質的な合意に至ったことは、両国の安全保障分野の大きな一歩です。さらなる進展を確信をいたしています。
Năm là hai bên tái khẳng định tầm quan trọng bảo đảm hòa bình, an ninh, an toàn, tự do hàng hải và hàng không tại Biển Đông, thúc đẩy giải quyết tranh chấp bằng biện pháp hòa bình, không sử dụng vũ lực hoặc đe dọa sử dụng vũ lực, nghiêm túc tuân thủ luật pháp quốc tế, nhất là Công ước của Liên Hiệp Quốc về luật biển 1982.
Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga said, quote, "It is a big step in the field of security and defense cooperation between the two countries that we reach an agreement in principle on the transfers of defense equipment and technology." Japan and Vietnam also reached an agreement on starting business track. Flights after travel between the two nations was suspended in March. Now, this would allow executives and skilled workers to travel without a 14-day quarantine period, provided they follow certain COVID-19 precautions.
In other news, South Africa's Health Minister Zweli Mkhize said he has tested positive for COVID-19 just 2 days after the country's diagnosed cases topped 700,000. The 64-year-old minister is the fifth member of the government to contract the virus after his colleagues in the Ministries of Defense, Labor, Trade and Mineral Resources. The hands-on minister, who has been constantly on the move across the virus-ravaged country since the start of the pandemic, said he had taken the COVID-19 test after feeling abnormally exhausted and losing his appetite. He's now self-isolating at his home and has urged the few individuals who have been in close contact with him over the past week to quarantine and get tested. He was confident that he and his wife would fully recover from the virus.
Iran on Monday announced 337 deaths from the novel coronavirus, a record high for a single day in the Middle East country hardest hit by the pandemic. Now, the health ministry said the latest deaths brought to 30,712. The total number of fatalities since Iran reported its first coronavirus cases in February. The previous record death toll for a day in Iran was 279, announced on Wednesday. Iran said the total number of infections in the country reached 534,631 on Monday, with 4,251 people testing positive in the past 24 hours. The ministry said the current situation is the result of neglecting to comply with health protocols, reduced use of masks, and dangerous social behavior in recent weeks.
The number of COVID or confirmed coronavirus cases worldwide passed 40 million on Monday, according to a Johns Hopkins University tracker. A total of 40,076,184 infections and 1,113,962 deaths have been recorded across the globe. More than half the global caseload has come in the three hardest hit countries: the United States with 8,154,935 infections, India with 7,550,273, and Brazil with 5,200,000. 235,344 cases.
We'll take a short break. Eagle News, we'll be right back.
Noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Welcome back. President Donald Trump lashed out at, quote, stupid critics from within his own party and called for unity after growing Republican criticism and warnings of a bloodbath in the November 3 election. The president issued the comments as he and his Democratic opponent Joe Biden hit the ground in crucial swing states in the final stretch before an election that opinion polls show the real estate mogul is at serious risk of losing. Let's listen in.
But we had an entire, very powerful party. That's all they have. They have two things. They have a very powerful Democrat Party that always sticks together. They don't have any of these rebels that we have in the Republican Party. I call them stupid people. Okay. I call them stupid people because they play right into the hands. But the Democrats really don't have that. They have two things. They stick together like you've never seen. They are smart and they're vicious. Like, let's impeach him even though he did nothing wrong. You know, they're vicious. They're vicious. Possessed by this Marxist madness, they'll kill your jobs, dismantle your police departments, dissolve your borders, raise your taxes, destroy your suburbs. I saved your suburbs. Women, suburban women, you're supposed to love Trump. I got rid of the regulation. I can't believe it. They can't. You know, the fake news keeps saying that suburban women don't like me because I don't sound nice. I don't have time to be nice. I got a lot of work to do for you. He's lost it. You know that. The modern left does not use reason or persuasion to advance their cause. They use intimidation, coercion, and control, and worse. They demand absolute allegiance or else. And you saw that yesterday. Did you see Dianne Feinstein? Lindsey Graham's a good guy. You know, they're friendly. They've been working forever together. And she happened to grab him. He grabbed her. You know, it's a friendly. They want to destroy the woman. These people are sick.
More than 217,000 Americans dead because of COVID-19. Worried about sending their kids to school, worried about not sending their kids to school in July. Think about what it takes to be a black person. Love this country today as it does. It's deep love for this country. And for us too long, it hadn't been recognized. We need leadership that de-escalates tensions, opens lines of communication, and brings us together to heal and to hope. As president, that's precisely what I'll do. George Floyd's 6-year-old daughter, who I met with in the family, I knelt down to say hi to her, and she looked at me and said, Mr. Vice President, Daddy changed the world. Daddy changed the world.
President Trump, scrambling to make up lost ground, is on a furious multi-state barnstorming tour, hopping on Sunday from Nevada to California and then back to Nevada for a day of rallies and fundraising before moving on to Arizona on Monday. An infrequent churchgoer, he attended services Sunday in a cavernous but but not entirely full evangelical church in Las Vegas. Congregants prayed for him, and when a confection plate was passed, a pool photographer saw President Trump toss in a handful of $20 bills. Biden, a practicing Catholic, attended Mass with his wife Jill at their church near Wilmington, Delaware, before walking outside to visit the grave of his son, Beau, who died of brain cancer in 2015.
Back in Asia, Thailand's Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha says his government is trying to avoid using excessive force against protesters, but that demonstrators must not damage property. Please watch this.
ก็เห็นได้ว่ารัฐบาลก็พยายามปฏิบัติหน่อมากที่สุดอยู่แล้วนะก็ขอไม่กี่อย่างเองอย่ากระทำความผิดทำลายทรัพย์สินราชการทำลายทรัพย์สินประชาชนนะแล้วก็สิ่งที่ไม่ถูกคือระมัดระวังการกระทบกระทั่งกันในกลุ่มผู้ชุมนุมการใช้กำลังต่างๆก็พยายามหลีกเลี่ยงให้มากที่สุดนะแต่ก็ขออย่าให้มีการสร้างสถานการณ์ให้นำไปถึงจุดนั้นก็แล้วกันประเด็นที่รัฐบาลจำเป็นต้องทำก็คือในเรื่องการปกป้องสถาบันพระมหากษัตริย์อันนี้เป็นหน้าที่ของคนไทยทุกคนที่ต้องดำเนินการในเรื่องเหล่านี้และเขาขอร้องกันเรื่องไม่กี่เรื่องนี่แหละ
Tens of thousands of mostly young protesters have taken to the streets in the past week in defiance of an emergency decree banning gatherings of more than 4 people. Police said around 20,000 people protested across the capital on Sunday, although activists and local media estimated much bigger crowds. As they prepared to rally again, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha said Parliament, currently in recess, would be recalled to discuss how to reduce tensions. The largely leaderless movement is calling for the resignation of Prayut, a former army chief and a mastermind of a 2014 coup, as well as the rewriting of the military-drafted constitution they said rigged last year's election in his favor. Most controversially, protesters are also making unprecedented demands to reform the powerful and ultra-wealthy monarchy.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong activists also protested outside the Thai consulate in the city in support of the pro-democracy protests in Bangkok. Prominent local activist Joshua Wong said Hong Kong stands with the protesters in Thailand, adding that the country inspires Hong Kongers a lot to continue their fight for freedom. Take a look.
With the crackdown from the authorities in Thai, today we stand with fellow protesters in Thailand. Crackdown and the suppression is not the way out. It's the time to end the bloodshed in Thailand and to push forward democratic reform.
Hong Kong and Thailand have both seen their streets filled with protesters daring to take on an entrenched political elite and to discuss once taboo subjects in their push for greater freedoms. Varnai Vanijaka, a political analyst at Bangkok's Thammasat University, said tech-savvy youths in both territories have shared cultural values. He said it's the love for freedom and the courage to fight for change. Both movements are primarily motivated by inequality and democracy, but in pushing for a greater say in how their fates are forged, they are taking on formidable foes resistant to change. For Hong Kong, it is the Chinese Communist Party, which crushes dissent on the mainland and has increased control over the restless semi-autonomous city. Beijing has rejected calls for greater democracy and police accountability and has since blanketed a finance hub in a national security law that has, for the meantime, snuffed out mass dissent. In Thailand, meanwhile, it is the monarchy, backed by the powerful coup-prone military, that sits at the apex of the political pyramid. For now, it is unclear how the palace will react to the Thai protests, but in previous periods of turbulence, it has played a pivotal role in deciding the outcome.
The spire of San Francisco de Borja Church in Santiago collapses in flames after protesters vandalized it and set it on fire. Thousands of demonstrators gathered Sunday in central Santiago to mark the anniversary of a protest movement that broke out last year, demanding greater equality in Chile.
In Belarus, police detained more than 200 people as tens of thousands march against strongman Alexander Lukashenko in defiance of police threats to open fire after weeks of demonstrations. Crowds of demonstrators waving red and white opposition flags descended on the gritty industrial neighborhood in southeast Minsk for a march along Partisan Prospect, a key transport artery and home to a number of factories. Some protesters chanted "Strike" and "You and your riot police get out." Belarusian authorities deployed military trucks and water cannon, but police largely refrained from using riot control equipment. The ex-Soviet nation has been gripped by historic protests after Lukashenko claimed victory in August 9 elections over Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, a popular opposition candidate.
Meanwhile, in France, thousands of people gather in Paris, Toulouse, Lille, Bordeaux, Marseille, and elsewhere to pay homage to the teacher decapitated for showing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad to his pupils.
In a related news, French police swooped on radical Islamist groups 3 days after the beheading of the teacher who had shown his pupils the satirical cartoons of the Islam prophet Muhammad. The raids came a day after tens of thousands of people took part in rallies countrywide to honor the teacher, Samuel Paty, and defend freedom of expression, including the right to show cartoons regarded by many Muslims as insulting. Gérald Darmanin said the swoop on Islamist networks was designed to send a message that enemies of the Republic would not enjoy a minute's respite. Sources close to the operation told AFP that individuals targeted in the police operation were known to the police for radical preachings or hate speech on social media. Darmanin also said the government would also tighten the news on NGOs with links to Islamist networks, including the high-profile anti-Islamophobic collective.
Cambodia has been hit by heavy flooding and the death toll there jumped to 20. Let's watch this.
តាំងពីថ្ងៃទី14មកហើយពេលយប់ប្រឡប់ឡើងមកគឺលិចរហូតហើយរហូតដល់ពេលនេះគឺថ្ងៃទី18ហើយក៏យើងគិតថានៅយូរហើយទៀតព្រោះទំសក់ថាជា 30% ឡើយឯងលើកដំបូងទេលើកដំបូងបាទលើកទី1ឯងនៅទីក្រុងភ្នំពេញបាទកាលពីមុនមកដែរលើកចឹងឯង
Tropical storm-triggered rains caused floods in 19 of the kingdom's 25 cities and provinces since the beginning of the month. Almost 60,000 houses and 240,000 hectares of farmland have been flooded, affecting 245,428 people in 19 provinces and cities, including the capital Phnom Penh, and nearly 8,000 families were evacuated, according to official figures. The kingdom is suffering from the impact of tropical storm Sodel, which could lead to further flooding.
11 soldiers are dead and a frantic search is underway for 11 others after a huge landslide hit central Vietnam as the country battles its worst flooding in years. Heavy rain has pounded the region for more than a week, and at least 64 people have been killed in floods and landslides, according to Vietnam's Disaster Management Authority, with concerns mounting that waters could rise further. Rocks rained down on the barracks of a military station in Quang Tri province, with 22 soldiers believed to have been buried underneath thick mud. Lieutenant General Phan Van Giang, the Army's Chief of General Staff, warned there could be further landslides in the area. The government also said 11 bodies have been recovered so far, and it comes just days after 13 members of a rescue team were found dead after a failed attempt to save workers from a hydropower plant engulfed by a landslide. The bodies of 2 employees at the plant have been found, but 15 are still missing. River levels in Quang Tri had reached their highest in 2 decades. The Disaster Management Authority raised its risk alert warning to the second highest level on Sunday.
Meanwhile, Pagasa said tropical depression Pepito slightly intensified and continues to bring rains over most parts of the Philippines. Pepito now packs maximum sustained winds of 55 kilometers per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 70 kilometers per hour. It was last seen 410 kilometers east of Virac, Catanduanes, moving west-northwestward at 20 kilometers per hour. Pagasa forecasts light to moderate with at times heavy rains over Quezon, Bicol region, eastern and central Visayas, and Mindanao are likely to prevail until Tuesday. Flooding and rain-induced landslides may also occur during heavy or prolonged rainfall, especially in areas highly susceptible to these hazards. As of 5 p.m., tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 was raised over Isabela, Aurora, Quirino, eastern portion of Kalinga, eastern portion of Mountain Province, Ifugao, Nueva Vizcaya, Nueva Ecija, and northern portion of Quezon. Strong to near gale force winds will be experienced in these areas within 36 hours. Meanwhile, the northeasterly surface wind flow, partly enhanced by Pepito, may bring strong force to near gale force winds with occasional gusts over Batanes, Babuyan Islands, and the coastal and mountainous areas of northern Ilocos, Norte, Apayao, Cagayan, Isabela, Aurora, Quezon, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, Albay, Sorsogon, and northern Samar. Gale warning is still hoisted over the seaboards of Batanes, Cagayan, Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, and Isabela due to rough and very rough seas. Moderate to rough seas will be experienced in the next 24 hours over the eastern seaboards of Central Luzon and Bicol region and the seaboards of northern Samar and eastern Samar. We got more updates for you. Please don't go away. We'll be back.
Sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Hello there. Imagine Dami got the virus, and she infected 2 more. And those 2 infected a lot more of people. And it goes on and on until it became an epidemic. But what if Dami stayed at home? Then those 2 wouldn't have contracted the virus. Then those people would have not been infected. This is not just your battle, it's everyone's, and you can be a huge help. Follow social distancing, or better yet, stay at home.
Welcome back. China's economy powered ahead in the third quarter. Data showed Monday, building on a strong recovery from painful coronavirus lockdowns, while the country's crucial army of consumers picked up their spending last month as they grow more confident. However, the expansion fell short of forecasts, and officials warned of uncertainty as the disease continues to ravage other key markets, with the National Bureau of Statistics saying the international environment is still complicated. Having essentially shut down major cities around the country to fight the virus, China's economy saw an unprecedented contraction in the first 3 months of the year, but with new infection rates being brought under control, it has now seen a strong recovery over the past 6 months, and that has put it on track to be the only major economy likely to expand this year, according to the International Monetary Fund. The 4.9% growth in July to September followed a 3.2% rate in the previous 3 months and is close to pre-pandemic levels. The reading was held by a forecast-beating 3.3% jump in retail sales last month, suggesting China's army of consumers are returning to shops and restaurants and traveling again.
China's e-commerce behemoth Alibaba has bought a controlling $3.6 billion stake in SunArt, which runs hundreds of hypermarkets on the mainland for French shopping giant Auchan. The move to take a 72% holding in SunArt tightens Alibaba's grip on China's vast e-commerce sector as it looks to soak up the new customers pushed online to buy groceries, fresh food and healthcare products by the coronavirus. It also hands over control of 13 million square meters of retail space in scores of cities across the country. SunArt was created by Auchan in 2000 with Ruentex Group and joined in an alliance with Alibaba in 2017. That tie-in gave the Chinese firm ownership of around a third of the hypermarket company. Alibaba quickly set about transforming SunArt from a traditional bricks and mortar hypermarket to an online groceries hub, matching its wider e-commerce goods business. The buyout of SunArt will also boost a promise to deliver groceries within 30 to 60 minutes of being ordered over Alibaba's Tmall platform.
Israel and Bahrain cemented a deal officially establishing relations and signed 7 memorandums of understanding, further opening up the wealthy Gulf region to the Jewish state. The documentation was signed at a ceremony in the presence of other international dignitaries and reporters, fleshing out a U.S. brokered deal the two nations had agreed to at the White House back in September 15. The Israeli delegation, led by National Security Council Chief Meir Ben Shabbat, had traveled to Manama from Tel Aviv on the first direct flight between the two countries. On Sunday, the two nations' officials agreed to establish peaceful diplomatic relations and cooperate in the fields of economy, civil aviation, finance, communications, and agriculture, according to Israel's foreign ministry in a statement. It also said it would cooperate with Bahrain's foreign ministry and noted that the two nations had agreed on the exemption of visa requirements for diplomats. Bahrain's foreign minister, Abdulatif Al-Zayani, said that the decision to normalize ties comes from the belief in the values of tolerance in a region whose people have suffered from wars and conflicts. The two sides will be free to open embassies in each other's countries.
Monetary Fund urges the Middle East and North Africa countries to accelerate reforms and diversification efforts as the energy-rich region faces unprecedented challenges due to the coronavirus and low oil prices. In its latest regional economic outlook update this month, the International Monetary Fund projected GDP of the MENA region to contract by 5% this year, compared to an earlier projection in July of minus 5.7%. Let's watch this.
And therefore, we should look at what is happening today as a call for action, and also as an opportunity to accelerate the transformation of the economy, create more opportunities, especially for the youth. We expect that both growth and unemployment to be affected this year. And overall, this crisis could bring growth down by 5%, as well as also unemployment could go up by 5%. We are at, I would say, an important moment where there are hopes that the vaccine could accelerate the recovery, but also there are challenges with the risk of a second wave of the coronavirus.
And finally in our news, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket fired its 14th batch of Starlink internet relay satellites into orbit from the Kennedy Space Center, with another set of 60 awaiting launch Wednesday from the nearby Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Take a look. With Sunday's flight, SpaceX has now launched 835 Starlinks in a rapidly expanding global network that eventually will feature thousands of commercial broadband beacons delivering high-speed internet to any point on Earth. Now, to reach that goal, the company plans to launch at least 120 new Starlinks every month.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Yeah. We're just talking about the internet. We all want a fast internet. We really need that now. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm CJ Hero. We'll be back tomorrow.
Indeed. I'll see you back tomorrow, CJ. And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.